Department or by checking the city website at minnetonkamn.gov. Copies of tonight's agenda and staff reports are on the podium outside these chambers. The meeting is televised and web streamed on the city's website. From a broad standpoint, the EDAC attempts to find a balance between individual rights and community responsibilities as they make their recommendations. Individual rights are easy to understand. Community responsibilities are more subtle, but the idea is that we as members of the community agree to limit our individual rights for the common good of the group. The Community Development Department, the Economic Development Advisory Commission, and the City Council are charged with managing these sometimes difficult balancing acts. We ask you to keep this broader perspective in mind as we review tonight's subject matter. Before we begin, please make sure your cell phones are turned off. The items on tonight's agenda include business update, transit update, and staff report. And with that, can you call roll?
Connors.
Present.
Duginski-Cebulka.
Present.
Falk.
Present.
Haig is excused tonight. Haramatka.
Here.
Jacobson.
Here.
And Johnston is excused tonight.
Okay. Do we have to approve the minutes from the last meeting?
Mm-hmm.
I would
see if I can
motion that we approve the minutes from the September 30th, 2024 meeting.
Go ahead.
Approved.
All in favor? Aye.
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 Then that brings us to
Just Chair, just to make sure the record's clear, it is
Yeah.
September 30th, not 26th as the slide showed, so
okay.
that motion was correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's okay.
And then business items, the business update. Oh, we normally don't. Well,
Oh, we haven't. Sorry. Deb, we're at a different meeting. We're at our council meeting. They don't have their agenda, but that's all right.
yeah, I was a little confused as I saw the agenda had that on there. So that brings us to business update.
Perfect. Thank you. Hi, everyone. For those of you I haven't met, I'm Kirsten Yeager, the Economic Development Coordinator. Thank you, Julie. So today I wanted to go over a few things with you, first of which is all the studies that we're doing for our business community lately. The first of which is our business survey, which we started developing the questions in 2024, but actually those are happening as we speak. We have Morris Leatherman, who does our resident survey, has been contracted to do a business survey by phone, and that's taking place currently. We last did one of these in 2021, and the data that we got from that survey was really useful informing us of what programs and offerings our community wanted, and helped us create things like our loan programs and tailored that work. And so I'm really looking forward to getting the results of this survey as well to help us guide the future work. And we should be getting results from that in about a month. We also currently are working on a commercial market analysis, and should see results for that also by the end of the month here. That's with Marquette Advisors. They've done a commercial market analysis for us in the past too, in 2018. And that data is really useful because it gives us a better understanding of our commercial real estate here. So we can learn more. You know, we hear about trends in office space use, and we can see if what we're hearing anecdotally is what's happening in the data, and what the demand for our retail spaces, and so on and so forth. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. And then we also conducted this past year our visitor reports, both for the Ridgedale area and for Minnetonka as a whole. Julie, do you want to tell us a bit more about the background of those visitor reports?
Sure. Thank you, Kirsten. The visitor reports, if you can't remember what they are, basically post-pandemic, we were having a hard time figuring out of specifically Ridgedale was rebounding. So we kind of started there trying to gather data. And what we kind of uncovered was a really neat tool to observe visitors to certain areas of the city. So we've studied Opus in the past, and that's more about employment, retail at Ridgedale, and then the city as a whole. So it has been really great information, not only for the city to understand better the daytime population in some of these areas. We use it from fire to police to community development to helping businesses understand their market and who's coming into that area. The data that you see in these reports, I don't know, do you guys remember seeing the reports before or not? Because I don't want to go too far. Okay. So if you haven't looked at them before, they tell you everything from the age of the person to what maybe they might be buying to how long do they stay in the area. And so some of this data, it's just picked up by your cell phone and your habits that you maybe are charging on your credit card, etc. So there's lots of ways that this data is accessed. We never have anybody's personal data. It's always summarized to us in a report form. That's the data that we see. It's aggregated to share some trends. So again, if you haven't looked at those reports in the past, they are on our website. We'll get this 24 report uploaded too, and so that you can kind of see the numbers over time. What we're happy to say though is like Ridgedale has rebounded very well after the pandemic. We weren't sure for a while. We were watching it pretty closely, but it's pretty strong, and that's good for the city, good for the tax base, etc. So hopefully that helps. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Julie. And I included just some examples for you all to see the types of things that are in these reports, like Julie mentioned. So we have citywide information that teaches us things like where people were before they came to Minnetonka and where they're going after they leave Minnetonka.
Right. So just go back to the, so
Yeah,
people
yeah.
are coming from Costco
It makes the
for
top.
some reason, and they're coming back and they're going home. You can kind of see that pattern. I'm trying to think. Nordstrom Rack for some reason got picked
Yeah,
up.
that's a big one apparently.
I don't know. So some of this stuff is pretty interesting.
I was already creating stories about it in my head, like, well, maybe they first go to Nordstrom Rack, they don't see what they like, so then they go to Nordstrom at Ridgedale, and then they go home.
Well, I was curious. Does it tell you that can you dig in deep enough to go, the people who were here went to this specific place afterwards or not?
I imagine.
This is it's aggregated again in
Yeah.
percentages. So I mean, we get kind of the highest percentages where people are headed to and where they're coming from. There is a map, a complementary map that goes with this that gets a little bit more detailed about
Okay.
where people are ending up or where they're coming from. So that's also interesting to look at.
So to continue these storylines, I also pulled a snippet of the consumer lifestyle segmentation. So this is kind of building a narrative around the types of people who are visiting Minnetonka. And it's not, we worked with Cobalt consultants to do this research, but they didn't create these categories. It's like an industry standard thing. They're called the mosaic segmentation. So I just wanted to read a little snippet for you. I promise I'm not going to spend most of the evening reading for you, but I want to read a little snippet of our 13% are booming with confidence. So the description here is booming with confidence are typically made up of married couples in their earning years. They are now empty nesters and are fast approaching retirement. They are college educated. The main difference in these segments compared to earlier ones is that they are also world travelers. With dual earners in the household, they bring in a nice six-figure income, which allows them the financial freedom to live a very comfortable lifestyle. Their preferences tend to be on the quieter side. While they are nearing retirement, they like to be near places of work as well. The average equity of their residence tends to be upward of $350K. So that kind of gives you a little picture of the types of things we can learn from these reports of who is coming into Minnetonka. And when we share these resources, it's also something that our business owners can use in understanding the lifestyles and the spending habits of people who come here. So this is a snippet from specifically the Ridgedale area. That's just more straight numbers, right, of how many people are actually visiting Ridgedale. Pretty impressive. And as you can probably imagine, or at least I assume, August makes sense with back to school, December with the holidays.
And on this slide, Kirsten, there is more data. We went back to, I think, 2018 with this data, so you can watch what was happening before the pandemic, after the pandemic, or during, I should say, and now after. So it's the data is pretty rich in terms of what we have.
Exactly. So that is all for the visitor reports. I also want to give you all an update about our technical assistance programs that we offer to businesses here in Minnetonka. We have Elevate Hennepin and the Metropolitan Consortium of Community Developers Open to Business programs. And our contracts with these programs expired at the end of 2024. And so the council approved the 2025 to 2026 agreement on Monday, and I'll share more details about that in the next slide. But looking at this past year here, Elevate Hennepin, which provides technical assistance programs, including the opportunity for businesses to work with consultants from a variety of different business areas for one-on-one service, as well as cohort models. So they have programs where CEOs of the same level, maybe they're emerging entrepreneurs, or maybe they're businesses that are making a certain range of revenue and have a certain number of employees. They have different specialized programs to learn as a cohort to both provide relevant content to their specific needs, but also help build relationships within that group of learners. And we have a long relationship with the Open to Business program that MCCD provides, and they are also serve as technical assistance consultants through the Elevate Hennepin program. So they do that one-on-one advising, like other areas of business support do at Elevate Hennepin, but they also provide a more attentive service for us here in Minnetonka to be the first point of contact for businesses to orient them on where they need to go. And any other sort of business need that we have, we can work with them to provide that sort of assistance. For example, this past year they did some canvassing for us, so going directly to businesses and sharing with them what resources exist. I don't yet have their Q4 data, so those numbers are going to be slightly higher, but that shows you for the first 3 quarters of the year. So that agreement that I mentioned earlier, it's similar to the past agreement. The costs of the programs are the same, but a new offering that I just wanted to highlight is now the county's Elevate Hennepin program is also going to be offering small business loans for general use and also for commercial space purchases and improvements. All right, so that's all I had for business. I don't know if I'm going to take
Anybody
a pause
have
there.
any questions or comments on the update?
I think I'm going to turn my phone off when I go to Ridgedale.
Or you mean as soon as you enter Minnetonka?
Say, as long as you are in the city limits for 7 minutes or more, so that we're not picking up traffic. That's why we have a time set on it. So that's interesting. So If you're here for 7 minutes, it'll pick you up. If you're not here and you're just traveling on one of the highways, it won't pick you up. Just FYI.
And of course, they are collecting this data anywhere you are. It just so happens that when we contract for data, we just ask for Minnetonka. So kind of makes you
Yeah.
think twice about that cell phone, huh?
It's everywhere. I think this is great that you're using these tools, and it seems like you have a handle on a lot of things that the city can learn and then provide information to businesses in the city on a basis of, where are your customers coming from, where are they going, that could be a valuable resource.
That's the goal. Thank you.
Okay. That takes us to the transit update. You have the whole
Perfect.
show tonight.
Yeah, you're still stuck with me for a while here, folks. I'm sorry.
No, not a
If you're
problem.
starting to get sick of me, just, give me some sort of sign and I'll try to speed up or change the subject. All right, so moving to transit here. I tonight wanted to kind of give us a reminder of what our transit situation is in Minnetonka, a little background on that, talk about the study that was done recently, and then what we do with that information. So as a reminder, in Minnetonka, we get to choose who provides our transit services here. And we have had a transit cooperation agreement with Metro Transit since 2002. We've had the ability to opt out of those services since 2000. So essentially, we've always chosen to opt back in to contracting with Metro Transit. And our current contract with Metro Transit is set to expire on July 31st of this year. So we have roughly 6 months until that contract ends. And under that agreement, we essentially have 4 different forms of public transit in Minnetonka. So we have our classic buses, of course. Then we have Metro Mobility, so that provides services to people who can't access the traditional bus routes, potentially because of a disability or a health condition or something of that nature. Then we have our park and rides, which of course our biggest ones are the ones on 394, the Hopkins Crossroads one, Plymouth Road. And then we also have Transit Link, which if you're not familiar with that, it essentially is, it looks more like a smaller shuttle bus, and it's a service that is meant to essentially fill the gaps of what the regular bus routes can't serve. So you can call or schedule your ride ahead of time, and the idea is that it's then connecting you to the larger network system. But that is a scheduled service, so that'll be important for what we talk about in a little bit here. We are going to talk today about the study that we recently did, and one of the reasons why we chose to do that is because Metro Transit is currently working on their Network Now plan. So that is their development plan of what they're proposing changes to service should look like. And those changes would run from now through 2027. So for us, of course, with the anticipated Green Line Light Rail extension plan to open in 2027, that's kind of the time frame that we're working in and the situation that we have. In the staff report, I outlined some of the major changes that are going to be happening with that, or proposed to happen with that plan. But I wanted to particularly highlight what they call Metro Micro. Micro transit is a form of transportation, and it's essentially an on-demand shared ride service. So if you have ever taken Uber or Lyft, Uber still has, and Lyft used to have, an option where you could have other people ride in your vehicle with you. They're kind of along your route. That's what Metro Micro is on a public service platform. It currently is a service that's provided in North Minneapolis, and just on the 6th, they started offering it in Woodbury and Roseville as well. They tend to be smaller zone areas. so that they can pick up people within a shorter amount of time. It's an on-demand service. You don't have to schedule it the way you do Transit Link. And it's not necessarily just because bus routes don't operate in that area. And the current fare for that is $3.25 per ride. And then you can get free transfers to take the bus system or the light rail from there. When we look at what Metro Transit is proposing in this Network Now plan, most of it looks like it would be beneficial to Minnetonka based on what we learned from our study. And Metro Transit will be presenting this plan to the Met Council in March for approval. You'll see here, this is obviously slides that I'm now stealing from Nelson Nygaard, who presented to our council on Monday about the transit study that they did for us for 2024. And we actually have a long relationship with Nelson Nygaard because they conducted our last transit study in 2013. And in fact, we even had the same lead consultant putting together this report that worked on that report. So they're coming to it with a lot of context of transit services in Minnetonka. And first, one of the things I want to take you through is what we currently have here for transit. This is part of their research. So as we already went over, we have buses, we have Transit Link, we have Metro Mobility, and we have our park and rides. And this map here is showing you where buses currently operate in Minnetonka. It also shows where the light rail will be going. And you can see how the different size golden circles are indicators of, on average, how many people are boarding at that particular spot. So I don't want you to all just be listening to me all evening because you're going to get sick of me. So I also want to pick your brains too and learn your reactions when you see our current existing routes. I don't know if this is what you all expected it to look like. Did you know that this is where our bus routes were? Let me know what you think.
Go ahead.
Oh, me. So it's pretty obvious. They're at the business centers, the shopping mall, the parking ramps. I had this question, I think, last year when we were reviewing transit, when we were talking about bus service. This is a really good indicator of where business is at that point in time, but there's so much growth within the city itself, and there's main arteries like Plymouth Road, 101. Have we looked at how the future of transit's going to look within Minnetonka? The Transit Link is a great option, but if we're seeing larger populations moving into these areas, what are we planning on in terms of serving that so we can pull more vehicles off the road?
Yeah, great question. So yes, you'll see on some of these future slides, and even more so if you get a chance to dig into the actual report, which I will warn you, it's about 140 pages, but there's some good stuff in there. It shows they use these market areas to kind of show what the demand for transit looks like and what services it makes sense to provide in those particular areas. I imagine that, and Metro Transit is using resources like this too as they're planning out for the next few years. I also imagine for us here at the city, once we get more of our data back from our commercial real estate market analysis, that will also help. That is also providing information about future trends for at least the commercial side of things for real estate. So all of that helps inform what the future needs are for the city as well.
Kirsten, may I add?
Of course.
I think also to directly answer your question about are they planning for, when light rail is activated and that sort of thing, that's kind of what Network Now attempts to answer. I think doing our own study is our way to objectively look at if that service is what we need. And I think we were very positive about their microtransit option. we've tried the middle of the city routes. We've been through a number of iterations trying to look at transit differently, but never able to quite crack the case on fixed route service. It just is not, our city is not laid out that way. So microtransit might be the way to get at that, and I think that's why we were pretty positive with what Network Now came out with. But again, this separate city commission study is a way to kind of maybe truth that out. Is that really the right answer or not? And I think once you get a little bit further in your slideshow, you'll see some of that data coming through.
How do people become aware of that MetroLink? Because that's something that I've never heard of.
TransitLink?
TransitLink, thank you.
TransitLink is, it's advertised everywhere. I would say the people I see riding it typically maybe seniors, and it's usually people who have appointments somewhere and they're transit dependent. So that's typically the rider I see. However, there are other people that use it, but I would say that's a primary consumer of that. I don't know, Kirsten, if you see anything differently.
No, I'd say that's accurate, and I would say it is publicized with community engagement. You can always do more, so I think there isn't probably the same familiarity with these services as there are, the traditional bus, of course. And I think potentially Metro Micro might get a bigger push than TransitLink has. It's exciting and new, and it might be an opportunity to, assuming both services still exist, to kind of talk about the different purposes of the two of them as well. So hopefully that could also increase awareness.
So,
Do we have a question here? Yeah.
yes, please. So for the microtransit service, I understand that it will only be for portions of Minnetonka. It's not going to cover the entire city, is my understanding. And so when the decision makers come together to decide, and they decide which portions of Minnetonka are going to be getting that service, is it going to be a matter of them looking at demographic data, or I'm just trying to get a better handle on how that's all going to work.
Commissioner Connors, you're jumping to the end of my PowerPoint here. That's actually one of the recommendations that Nelson Nygaard has for the city, is for us to ask for more clarity about the Metro Micro zone coming to Minnetonka. We've heard that it's going to be coming here, but those sort of specific details is exactly what we will be asking for, or at least Nelson Nygaard recommends that we ask for. I can say that I know that Metro Transit has an interest in using Metro Micro as a way to build off of ridership for the light rail. So I imagine that in some way or another, they're going to want to make sure that those two collaborate together, with the Opus area or Ridgedale or so on and so forth. So that's one of the things that they recommend that we get more clarity on.
Thank you.
I do have one more question on the existing services. So do we have feedback about the frequency of available routes on all of these systems? And is there, I'm sure this is going to be talked about in the rest of your presentation, about adding more buses or adding more services to the same route. I've heard neighbors talk about they'd love to be able to get downtown from Minnetonka somewhere where it's not a 7 a.m. bus in some cases. So
yeah, a lot of that is outlined in the beast of a report. But what we have learned through this study is that already starting off, when we look at Minnetonka compared to our peer cities, we do have greater coverage or more consistent offerings of when the traditional buses are running. Some communities focus much more on weekdays and rush hours specifically, and are also focused primarily on that commuter path. And in Minnetonka, it's more spread out. Network Now is also proposing to increase that a bit, so adding some services on Sunday, for example. Currently, our all-day routes are the 9, the 6:12, the 6:15, and the 6:45. And then our rush hour routes are the 6:67 and the 6:73. I know I just threw a bunch of numbers at you that may not mean anything if you're not a current transit user, but that shows that we have 4 that are all day and 2 that are rush hour only. Does that answer your question? Okay.
And
Great.
they are improving the boarding or the pickup times on one of
The
the routes.
frequency?
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't remember which one off the top of my head, but yeah, in general, it's
Do you remember?
it's at least keeping the routes to having the buses come as often as they currently do, or increasing the frequency. There are some changes, though, in the Opus area of taking a couple routes and combining them together, too.
I'll just add one thing. I think also just having the microtransit available will connect into those areas to get to other places. That's kind of the goal, is to serve the western part of the community that's more single family and doesn't have the same coverage as the eastern side. So hopefully that's the goal of having the microtransit, is to get you to those other transit services or directly to where you need to go.
Yeah, we learned from this that shuttle services like Transit Link and Metro Micro are useful when you have smaller roads, because of course those large buses are operating on the large roads, and also that Micro can serve as a way of kind of testing out the demand for a service in an area and whether or not it would make sense to have a fixed bus route in that area at a later date. So there's a few different approaches that you can take to how you use microtransit, and it's been gaining popularity not just here at Metro Transit, but also nationally.
Yeah, it seems like the microtransit could help increase ridership on that 394 and Highway 7, because you look at the amount of usage of the Highway 7 route, and it's so small that it would be hard to justify regular timeframes or more frequent timeframes. But if microtransit brings people to that, then it could justify.
Definitely.
I'm curious, overall, has ridership regained since the pandemic, or where are we at?
Oh, great question.
I've seen average boardings per stop here, but I'm not seeing kind of if there's general trends of increasing ridership, or seems like some of these services may be coming about because there's increasing demand.
Yes, so there's a few different things at play with the offerings at Metro Transit. We did learn through this study that, as you would imagine, Minnetonka had the same dramatic drop in ridership that has happened nationally with COVID. I actually learned from our consultant that transit demand has been declining since around 2014, but of course the significant drop was with COVID. And we also learned that our ridership is increasing in Minnetonka, and it's actually improving at a faster rate than our peer cities. We don't actually know at this time why it's improving more so than our peer municipalities. That would require even more analysis than was outlined in this study, but that was one surprising fact that we learned. In general, I know for Metro Transit as a whole, for the regional system, numbers are on their way back up, but they are not where they were pre-pandemic. So we asked Nelson Nygaard in this study to help us figure out the value of our transit services that we have here to make sure that we are getting high quality services for Minnetonka. And this required quite a bit of analysis, including comparing what service looks like here as it does to other areas. They did this both in the metro area and also nationally. I just have highlighted here today our peer cities in the Twin Cities that they chose. So we have Maple Grove, Plymouth, Eden Prairie, Blaine, and Woodbury. So of those, Maple Grove, Plymouth, and Eden Prairie all have a suburban transit provider, and Blaine and Woodbury use Metro Transit just like Minnetonka. So like I mentioned earlier, we learned from this that Minnetonka is receiving a similar level of service compared to our peers, and that service is more even throughout the day and not just focusing on rush hour. And we have both local service, which means stopping frequently, going throughout the community, and then express service, which is more focused on those greater commuter destinations. And of these communities, there already is microtransit in Plymouth, Eden Prairie, and Maple Grove. Oh, I remember what else I wanted to point out. So I mentioned earlier how they look at what services make sense in a particular area, what type of transit is useful based off of the makeup of a particular area, and what type of data they'd be using to be planning for future needs. That's what those colors, well, that's what some of those colors are on the map. I know there's a lot going on this map, but those shades of green is showing the different market areas in each community. So you can see that Minnetonka has a lot of this lighter green color and some of that darker green color. That lighter green area there is the areas that typically are best served by rush hour express services and microtransit or transit link. And dark green areas typically do best with commuter services and your traditional bus routes. The other thing we learned from this report is while we are receiving a similar level of service, we do have greater regional connectivity because we're part of the larger Metro Transit service. So for those who are trying to access other areas in the Twin Cities, that's easier to do for those who are a part of Metro Transit. Okay, so this page is overwhelming because finance for transit is complicated. Again, these are just slides that I grabbed from Nelson Nygaard, but they looked at what funding currently exists for transit, not what you potentially could access, but just what sort of financial opportunities exist for transit. And there are four main areas. There are fares, of course, but that actually only accounts for 10% of Metro Transit's operating revenue. And that is not unique to our public transportation system. Across the nation, public transit is seen as a public service, so it's not paying for itself. They're all subsidized. Here in the Twin Cities, we also have the motor vehicle sales tax and the newer regional transportation sales and use tax. And then, of course, there are federal funds that are available, not something that Minnetonka could access that we don't have direct access to, but it does make up part of how public transit is funded. All right, so this is where Commissioner Connors is already jumping to my big reveal of what Nelson Nygaard suggests for us moving forward. They outlined 4 different things that they recommended that we discuss with Metro Transit. And there it is, number 1, clearly define Metro Micro service parameters. So we know it'll only be a portion of Minnetonka. What portion is that going to be? They also recommended considering a crosstown connection between the 394 area to Opus, downtown Hopkins, and then, of course, we've got the Green Line extension, which is in the Opus area. So to have more of that direct connection between the areas. Number 3 here, advocate to maintain transit service on County Road 101 south of Highway 7. You can see there, this is a screenshot that they grabbed from what Network Now is proposing. And you can see the current route in that gold color and then the recommended or the proposed route in the blue. So they're recommending that we ask Metro Transit to consider for their Network Now plan to maintain some service south of Highway 7. And then they also recommended that we ask Metro Transit to support having the Hopkins Crossroads Park and Ride be part of the Key Express network, which is this new label that Metro Transit has for some of their services. The Key Express network means those are routes that provide all-day service going both directions, and they connect to the larger rapid transit system, so the light rail and the rapid transit bus systems. It just means if if you have an area that's part of that Key Express network, then you can more quickly get to other areas of the city on a regular basis. So in terms of actually who provides transit services for Minnetonka, Nelson Niagara didn't provide a recommendation. They were just providing the data so we could make decisions about what transit services we need in our community here. But they did put together this chart for us, which essentially highlights that there isn't really a clear answer when you're thinking of who should be providing your services. On the left-hand side there, we have the option to continue a new contract with Metro Transit when ours expires on July 31st. And then they compared that option to 3 other ones, which would be negotiating a new agreement with a suburban provider. That could be like Southwest Transit. Another option would be to become our own transit provider. And then the third would be to use multiple transit providers to provide services here. So you can see that there are pros and cons to different ones, particularly more cons with becoming your own transit provider. But besides that, it's a bit more complex. So I don't know if you all have any reactions to this chart or any of the rest of the data shared.
Go ahead, Deb.
Thanks. I just thought I'd give you a little, I don't know if any of you had a chance to watch the city council meeting because we heard the full presentation from the consultant, and there was kind of a variety of reactions from the council, and I think it's just good to sort of, know what the temperature in the room was. So several council members, expressed, I think, what many of us feel is frustration. It's just so hard to crack this nut and get people to use mass transit out here. We're all trying to do the right thing and get cars off the road and decrease our carbon footprint and do all the good things. And so some members, expressed frustration. The mayor specifically is sort of excited about different kinds of microtransit, including there are various apps that you can use that are somewhat like Uber and Lyft. Sometimes it's a ride share kind of thing, where you use an app and basically a car will come pick you up, or a small group of, you'll pick people up along the way. And he just feels like, to the point that we were talking about earlier, especially on some of our narrow streets, it just seems like it may be a more practical way of getting people where they're going without them needing to own their own cars. So that was one thing. And then one of the observations that was in the study that I always think about, and I've been thinking about it since I was on the Planning Commission, is that we live in a state with real weather, and there's often not even a good place to stand. There's often, in this time of year, sometimes there are big snow berms that you have to, just getting on and off a bus can be really difficult. And even in better weather, there's often not even a cement pad to stand on. Sometimes it's just a weed patch with a bus stop sign on it. And so, I think just making ridership a less miserable experience, maybe having a place to sit. I even suggested maybe re-upping our plastic film recycling when we were getting benches out of it, and maybe working with Metro Transit if we can provide the benches, if they'll install them at some of the bus stops. So those are some of the things that people talked about, just wishing there was a way to get at more ridership. And the mayor and me, and I think other people also, a little bit excited that there's some creative thinking going into smaller vehicles that can just connect people to those main arteries like the light rail and the express bus routes. And looking at the other cities, it really is kind of amazing. The level of service that we provide is so much better than the other suburbs. I was actually pretty proud of that. So,
If I may, Chair, wasn't able to share this at the council meeting, but if you're like Deb and you want to adopt a spot, and it's called Adopt a Stop at Metro Transit, there's a actual formal program to do that. So if you live by a transit stop and you want to make it a little bit nicer, as Councilmember Calvert described, I think you should probably participate in that program or get your neighbors to help you or whatever. And it's just like Adopt a Storm Drain or any of those other programs, because the city really doesn't have the capacity at this point to do all of those improvements. But certainly people who have transit stops by them can help out and try to be the ambassadors of transit, if you will. So Adopt a Stop is the name of the program.
that is a great tidbit to know. So thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I love a good pun. So, is there an avenue for Minnetonka residents to offer suggestions or their opinions on or ideas? There's a lot of transit users in Minnetonka spread out, but I think it'd be great for them to offer some ideas if they have them, or would like a stop nearby where it would be more convenient, or what they're looking for that would make them more of a transit user.
Chair and Commissioner Falk, I think that was the whole purpose of Network Now. So that was their opportunity as a city, as our citizens. There was even a open house, I can't remember, was it this fall? Kirsten?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it was in Hopkins, and it was for anybody who wanted to chime in about what this plan said. Being as detailed as trying to share with Metro Transit where you'd like a stop, that probably isn't going to work, because they use their data to plan and detail out. You can go back to the ridership map for a second. So they look at boardings all day long. They look at what's happening, who's riding the bus, what's generating ridership, is there housing, is there employment, all of those things. And that's how they make choices about where they have stops. So it isn't as easy as just saying, hey, I would like a stop here. Sure. Yeah, it needs to be more than that.
Can I have a follow-up, Sharon?
Sure.
I think that's absolutely fair. It's more in response to Councilman or Councilwoman Calvert's response, and what can we do to improve ridership, and find out the actual reasons about how we can do that with our Minnetonka residents.
Other comments on or regarding, which of the service providers makes sense? I'll just go ahead.
Oh, no,
Yeah.
I'm fine of becoming a bus driver and starting transit in Minnetonka. That's cool.
In thinking about the carbon footprint, increasing density is really what impacts that. So me not driving from my house to 101 and 5 to go out to dinner doesn't impact the carbon footprint if all I'm doing is getting a minivan to take me there. But it seems like Network Now, where we impact carbon footprint is taking people from Minnetonka to Minneapolis or Southdale, or where we're doing a density, or St. Paul. So it seems like Network Now is a great opportunity to link in and potentially make me not driving to Minneapolis easier for me, because I take the link to get to 394 and then get brought down there. And if that is the goal, it seems like working with Metro Transit is probably the best solution, because they're more able to link you to the other cities. So that's just my 2 cents.
I agree.
The one other thing that I started thinking about, and I was thinking about it at the city council meeting as well, is thinking how much Glen Lake has changed. And who's there now? So just thinking Javago's there, and was it Beacon Hill? Atrium. And just the level of development, and there's a lot more density there. And who may not be driving for too much longer. That seems like a pretty ripe opportunity for maybe the smaller buses to provide opportunities for the seniors there and others, frankly. But I think we are reaching sort of a critical mass there that I'm hoping we can take advantage of, because it didn't seem sort of emphasized or highlighted at all. But there are places like that have changed so much. Obviously, Opus is another, but that's so specifically, 55 and up. It's just a little bit.
And also thinking about, and you mentioned something about 62 as a transit corridor. As I look at this, it seems very straightforward to get to Minneapolis or anywhere along the way to Minneapolis. But I suspect there is a lot of Minnetonka residents that are also heading to the Southdale area, whether it's for shopping or medical. And I don't know if there is a decent connection if I wanted to take public transit to get to an appointment in the Southdale area. Maybe there's not enough density of people who would use it, but that would seem like, to Commissioner Calvert's comment about where the density of people are in Minnetonka, but then where is the density of where they're going?
Right, like, Chair, the only place that they have ability to do that now is through Transit Link. That's it.
Yeah,
They have
okay.
to schedule a ride, and that's the only way
Yeah.
to get there. It was interesting, I think it was in the newspaper over the weekend, but that corridor was denoted as the most congested corridor in our metro area.
Yeah.
And so if anything's ripe for improved transit services, that would be the corridor I would look at. But again, a little bit on the edge of our city, but at the same time, it's impacting people who live here or work here.
Right, yeah, we, after 3 o'clock in the afternoon,
Oh,
we never
just
get
don't
on
do it. Just don't do it.
62 eastbound. It just doesn't happen. And I'm wondering if you can use some of that telephone data from the business report to where are people going. It doubles up as an opportunity. Any other questions, or back to the presentation?
One more slide.
Okay.
Yes, so what do we do with all this data that we have? Well, we still have 6 months under our current contract with Metro Transit. We will continue to work with them. We meet with them on a regular basis, so we'll continue to do that. And we can take the service considerations that Nelson Nygaard recommended to Metro Transit for consideration to be included in their plans and in their Network Now plan. And we can use this data as we work on the next EIP to help inform our future plans. And July 31st is going to be here pretty fast, which means we will be working with Metro Transit on negotiating our next agreement shortly too. We already have relationships with the suburban transit providers as well, so we can continue to strengthen those relationships, explore what that partnership could look like if it were to evolve in some way, and take it from there.
And Kirsten, just one note on the agreement. If we get to, we're probably not going to get to a point of resolution by July 31st, but typically what happens in that case is we extend the agreement in its current form, then we work on language after we digest some of the work that we saw here.
Good point. And I did hear during Monday's council meeting too an interest from council members to watch this evolution, because of course we do have light rail coming in 2027, and so what that will mean for our community will play into all of this as well.
Great.
Thank you. I know
Thank
that's
you.
a lot from me.
It really, it seems like we're in a much better place than when we were, 5 years ago with this, that especially with the Network Now concept that serves a community like ours. And public transit is a difficult solution to come up with the way a city like Minnetonka is laid out, with where it's so spread out. So, great.
And I think, Tara, just to wrap up what was said, I think that the idea of bringing it tonight is so that you're not overwhelmed with another whole packet of information when you get the EIP, that you've read this in advance, so then you can move forward with your economic improvement program. So hopefully that is helpful to you as you prepare for that next step. Thank you.
Great. Okay, that takes us to the staff report.
Okay, here I am back on. I'm like, what slide is coming up? Martian 2 is under construction. That's well into construction. They did communicate that they're trying to be open in July, which is pretty quick as far as I'm concerned. But when they say things like that, they usually mean it, so we'll see. We have everything, I think, is done on Amani, which is our city-owned property for Roland, and so we're hopeful to get them under construction by the spring. That's our twin home construction. And Alicia and Kendall had worked on a handout to describe kind of the costs of that project, as well as the costs of the Mills twin home project, and I think we took some of what you said about the costs and just trying to impart that to other people, that you understand how much ownership product is costing in these times, and how much the city is putting into those projects and making them affordable. So we have that handout. We'll send that to you because I think that's helpful.
We'll put it on the housing.
We'll put on the story map, right? And we'll put that link back out to you. Greco, which is up by where the old Hillcrest site was, that is totally under construction. They did demo the building. That was a long time coming. We're very thankful for that, because that was a sore spot in our community for a long time. I already talked about Habitat, and then Gray Star. If you've not been down to Opus lately, there's lots of footings going in, and precast, and the parking ramp is going up, so you'll see that construction. If you've been out to Carlson at all, you'll notice a Mirabilla's under construction, so that flat area by the apartments is under construction. Lifetime Fitness, if you don't know 101, they're doing a major remodeling. And then the what used to be People's Organic, I don't use that name anymore, it's owned by a separate entity, but the building has been repaired. So if you didn't know, the trusses and the roof had come down. That repair is complete and has been inspected, so we're happy to have that building back in good shape. So that work is done. Walzer up on 394, that has started footings. The precast on the ramp is already starting. And then if you haven't been by Ridgedale and Wells Fargo, that is well underway too. So that's going to be an interesting site to watch, because they're leaving the building there, they're building the new building, then they're going to move into the new building, then that building's going down, and then they're going to build the other buildings. So it's like this kind of domino, if you will, of construction. So lots of things pending, but good construction numbers this past year. I think we were at $384 million in construction, which is a really good year for Minnetonka. Thank you.
All right, I'll pick up here. We're well underway with our zoning code update. So we've hired ZoneCo to do a diagnostic analysis of our zoning code. And last summer, the council reviewed the various options proposed by ZoneCo and decided to do a full rewrite of the zoning code. And the last time that was done, Julie, was 1986. So we're looking forward. I think it's a great opportunity to make some much needed change in our code. We have a process for that. January is the kickoff, and we'll be working through various groups to participate and provide their feedback on various sections of the code. And then the goal is to get to the public review in October, and then it'll take a while to get all of that feedback incorporated into the changes. So it's a big undertaking, and various commissions, I believe, will be involved, and there's a
Right.
whole plan.
Lee is the appointee from the EDAC, even though it's his last meeting. He'll switch to the zoning board, or zoning update board. I was going to say something. Oh, I know. I don't think we've never updated the code since 1986. It's a little bit strange to say. So it's what's interesting is when they did this diagnostic, they had documented every time the city had updated its code. And so when you do that, it sometimes gets a little confusing, or this section points to that section, and then you have to, for the reader, it's kind of messy. For those of us who work with it, we know how it works, we know what it says, but from the user standpoint, it doesn't work out very well. And so we're just going to take this opportunity to refresh, make it easier to update it with the goals and policies of the city. So that's what we're doing it for.
I'm excited about the images that will be added, because
Right.
back when it was written, it was all text, no images.
Right.
So hopefully that'll
Or
help
just small
clarify.
drawings, and it didn't help very much. Right, I agree. It'll be great.
A couple of housing updates for you. The rental registry program just wrapped up its first year. There were 372 registrations last year, 37 multifamily, so we still have a couple to get there, and then 335 individual units. So we were able to reach quite a few folks that have rental properties. Kendall's been hard at work sending out the renewals for this year, and we've already received 150. So we are well on our way to getting those registrations updated. On the homelessness pilot program, 59 residents have been served through that program, including 33 minors, using a total of about $68,000 with those efforts. In 2023, there was an additional $50,000 put towards rental assistance, and His House Foundation is now administering the emergency rental assistance. It happened to be a good fit for Brenda, who is the executive director, to have access to those rental dollars as she's working, trying to find permanent housing for our homeless residents. Did I say Martha or Brenda? Martha, I'm sorry, Martha at His House. On the homelessness working group, we have a group of city staff that have been kind of trying to tackle various aspects of homelessness. Kendall specifically has been researching a policy for homeless encampments, so that's what we're working on here early in 2024. And we'll be presenting a policy later this summer. On the Pathways to Homeownership side, this program has been very successful, more successful than we ever would have imagined. The initial contribution to this program was $300,000, and then an additional $200,000 was added in October. There's been a total of 11 loans with the average loan of $36,000. So when we had that second boost of $200,000 later in the fall, it was gone over the weekend because there was such a high demand for the program. In 2025, the budget included a levy of $100,000 for Pathways, and then $300,000 from the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. So that money is going towards that program, and it's a great program, and it's had a lot of success. So we're happy to see that. And then just a reminder that we have our story map now that tells a story about all our various housing programs. We continue to update that, and it's a great link if you ever have any questions about what the housing staff are up to. And as we add new programs and add new visuals, we'll be sure to update that for you, and we'll always put a link in your packet so that you have that information. Next meeting, February 13th. Stay tuned.
Chair, I have a question for staff.
Yeah, go ahead.
So we talked about these housing improvement areas, and specifically, I think there's two that come to mind. There was the Chasewood, and then there was one also that's, I think, right off of Cedar Lake Road.
And Cloud 9.
What's that?
And Cloud 9.
And
Yep.
Cloud 9, thank you. So has there been any further advancement of those? Is there any kind of update for us? Because I thought that was particularly of interest.
Chair Commissioner Ramatka, there was last Monday, the final ordinance was adopted for Chasewood Villas, so that moves the process forward for that project, and that was a $12 million improvement at that site. And the other ones just continue to pay back their loans, essentially. So those are the two that's the one that's moving through now. We continue to have inquiries. It just depends when they can get, support from the owners to want to move forward with the project. So
Yeah, that can take.
it can take a
really
few
long
years
time.
to get everyone on board.
So as Chasewood moves forward, I think it'd be fun for us to know how that is, and particularly my interest level is making these get off the blacklist from the standpoint of having these units be financeable. So it'd be nice to just kind of get updates from that.
Sure, absolutely. And that's the goal with the improvements, that the HUD and the lenders will say, okay, we're back in good standing again.
Right. So I think the next steps on that, they'll probably do construction over the summer. City will be issuing bonds at some point. They're doing a construction loan first, and then they'll cash out the bond, or cash out the construction loan with the bond. I don't have to explain this to you. You do bonds all day. Maybe for the rest of the viewing audience, shall we say. So I think that's kind of the next steps. And so they'll be dealing with construction for a pretty long period of time, because it's how many units total? Is it 178?
It's almost 170, I believe,
Yeah.
somewhere around there.
That's a lot to do. Windows and siding and roof, and not roof. Yeah, there's a
Well, you
list.
should push them to have it done by the bus tour.
To have
We could check on it by
Stop
the
by.
financeable in the
Actually,
city.
we should. We're going to put that on our list. Thank you. Yes, good idea. Never get rid of that, can we? So at this point, I just wanted to share a few thoughts about Chair Jacobson and Commissioner Johnston, who couldn't be here tonight, but I really want to thank both of them. As staff members, we enjoy our camaraderie we have with our commissions, and particularly the EDAC is one of those commissions. And I think, Chair, you always had this inside scoop on the mortgage market. You always kind of knew, especially the loan programs. I do particularly remember your expertise and your knowledge when we were setting up all the loan programs, and kind of what were the parameters and what were the requirements. And to me, that was invaluable, and I know the other staff really appreciated that. And you do it in such a way that it's very easy to listen to and learn from, and so we really want to thank you for that. You have a really good way about you as chair, and that too makes for an easier meeting, and just amazing work in your 8 years of time. I can't believe it's over. And if people don't know, 8 years is your max. 2 terms is how the city code works. Same thing for Commissioner Johnston, and so we'll talk to her later, but there will also be like a presentation at council, and so you'll have that when you're available, Lee. And so heartfelt thanks from staff to the chair. Very good work. Thanks.
Well, thank you, and it has been just so interesting to see how the city works, and it's just impressive that. So I appreciate it.
Is this your last meeting?
This is my last meeting.
Wow. Congratulations and thank you.
Thank you. Motion to adjourn?
No, because you'll be sorely missed. We got to keep going.
I'm not allowed to.
Oh.
Yeah.
Second.
Meeting adjourned. All right. Thank you.